I am tracker Gina Marie Rangel Quinones, field reporter, journalist.
I'm Robert Lundahl, filmmaker and storyteller. I stand up for human rights and the environment.
Good to be here. Welcome to Creative Frontline.
Welcome to Creative Frontline.
Stand up, stand strong, stand in. We are Creative Frontline.
The story of Celilo Falls is the story of the Pacific Northwest. Pictures of Indian people dip netting for the giant salmon that once freely made their way up the Columbia to a lower Snake River now clogged and obstructed by 14 dams, many with navigation locks, may be seen online. A remnant of a past destroyed for progress. Shipping, trade, getting wheat to market through a region once controlled by the KKK. To threaten and silence Indian people, sometimes by killing them, and impoverishing and ravaging whole communities. Over time, the power went to aluminum manufacturing, a beneficiary of this genocide, used for military purposes, airplanes, ships, all kinds of hardware for death. This, the unvarnished truth, still covered up, denied and avoided at all costs, generations later. Either we have the courage to face it, or we don't. In this episode, we speak with Lana Jack, the last of her people, in a tragic and emotional story only she is left to tell. And now, it's Google continuing the dark legacy of an American dream, blistered and bleeding in a pool of blood, with data centers springing up, diverting creeks, and mining aquifers in yet another water grab for a company whose motto is, and was, do no harm. It is a supreme mastery of hypocritical obliteration of a river, its people, and the truth.
My name is Lana Jack. I am Celilo. I'm the last of my people to tell our truth. And just how many ways, how many levels in which our water rights, our sovereign say, our inherent sovereignty has been robbed of us here because of the robbing and stealing of our land. Celilo Falls was taken prisoner of war March 10th, 1957, here on the Columbia River. And my chief, Tommy Thompson, negotiated all the way through from the first dam on this river to the many dams. But after the Dow's Dam was built, it pretty much hijacked our sovereignty and stole our water. By natural law, he operated mind, body, and soul, knowing that our mother was alive or is alive, and she has breath, and that she's our caretaker here. And that the reciprocity in that is that we are also her caretakers, her stewards. The condemnation of Celilo Falls, Wayamtama, was something that he could never, ever conscionably consent to. And because he would never consent, they colluded the state, county, BIA, Army Corps of Engineers. They even got the tribes in it on the end. We've been here since time immemorial. When you Google Celilo, about every document out there says we've only been here 10,000 years. Well, I don't know if you can quantify time immemorial by 10,000 years. There's a many great injustices against us, to keep us from our usual and accustomed sites. Our usual and accustomed sites where we maintained our sustenance, the sustenance that our Mother Earth gave us, those songs, those ways, those sacred foods that my chief Tommy Thompson defended to his end. And our first food in our Indian way here is water. Water didn't make it into the treaty writings, because if it was in the treaties, along with fishing, hunting, and gathering, we'd have more say over what happened here at Celilo Falls and what happened to our trails that led to our mountains, to where we traveled thousands of years, these routes. We probably lived back there first and foremost, and traveled down and back up to the mountain. Ancient trails. Well, you know, one of the things that's been brought to my attention here, and that I've been following and watching and going to the meetings of the city council here at the Dalles, Oregon, and the county commissioners of Wasco County, these discussions, they take and make agreements, water agreements, that I completely disagree with, because they're sitting on our usual and accustomed sites. And the reciprocity of who we were as a people doesn't even exist anymore. The bifurcated process has kept us divided. You people, your people, those people, your people. And when our tribal delegates get up, I speak for my people. But nobody has spoken out on behalf of my people, the Celilo YM. Since my chief has been gone, Chief Tommy Thompson, he lived to be 103 years old. He was there when they designated these usual and accustomed sites that the tribes now exclusively have right to, where we've been excluded as having no right as Celilo YM, because we wouldn't take the money. And the supreme law of the land under the Constitution, Article 6, which makes us those who negotiated, not for our stay here, but for everybody else to stay within our territories. We were made to concede. We were relegated. We were killed and murdered. And a lot of that has to do with our sacred foods and our sacred ways. As a matrilineal society, I come from a woman who fought through 6 relocation plans here at Celilo as landowners. I'm mocked today and criticized that I didn't get enrolled anywhere with one of these tribes so that I could maintain my mom's fishing sites. I could maintain our usual and accustomed sites out here at Celilo Falls, where we've been fishing since her beginning. We're left here to fight for what's little is left of the Columbia River, even as she's perishing before our eyes with green algae all up and down. I can't show it to you. I wish I could, but I drive up and down the river praying for our river. She's hot. Too many dams on this river. And now Google wants to come in and take trillions of gallons of water from the creeks, the aquifer it sits on. They're going to divert, the city and county have colluded to divert water from one creek to the aquifer. But this creek, Mill Creek, that they're talking about diverting to the aquifer here this winter, is already had a river diverted to it 100 years ago. They just replaced the pipe. The old lead pipe with PVC. The Dog River. You see, Tenino means the Dog River Indians. Tenino is where we met our relatives, our close relatives, in this relationship of reciprocity, different bands of people, different dialects, clearly different ways. We're a longhouse people here, 7-drum religion, Washat people, dancers, medicine dancers. They desecrated everything about us to take our water rights from us, to take our usual and accustomed sites from us. So, and they did away with us as a people so nobody could be here to tell them or remind them of their thieving ways. But I'm here as the last of my people, and I say that with great anguish. My heart, my soul. Because my river and I, we share the same fate. We were made to perish behind Congress's moves to extinguish our sovereign say and right here at Celilo Village. Now, Google gets to be the supreme law of the land. They're going to own the Dalles Dam.
And this is because they have the data processing operations that have lots of servers, computer servers, and
they've had one here, one data center for 10 years that sits right on the aquifer and sits right on the Columbia River and sits on Taylor Lake. Taylor Lake was where we harvested our trout for our usual and accustomed food for trout and sturgeon, both of them on the Columbia River side. But the Taylor Lake was where we harvested our trout as we traveled up Chenoweth Creek to meet, or Mill Creek, to meet with our Dog River Indians who have already been harvesting elk and deer and huckleberries. We traded there. It's an ancient route for us. They both are. And that's what we're denied at the heart of it as Celilo YM Indians. And I can see why, because they wanted those water rights more than anything. And they wanted Celilo Falls more than anything. And in the end, they were taught to learn their place, that this is federal Indian land here, and you have no say. They say it's just a trust piece of land, but the many writings that I have between the attorneys and all the people who were involved, BIA people, Army Corps of Engineers people, and my recent discoveries out of Seattle National Archives. By the way, we had to save it because Trump was trying to monopolize and play a monopoly and sell all the federal buildings for profit. And one of them was the Seattle National Archives, which I extracted, unredacted, and authenticated documents out of there, giving me a very clear picture of just how we did and conversations that took place on the background of it all with the Army, the BIA. And then, we have an amazing man that fought the United States government for 103 years of his life. And in the end, when they wanted his signature for the taking of that money. And they set precedents with other documents, a lease to move into one of the houses where they simply rolled his finger across the new lease to get into one of the houses here at Celilo. Well, they followed that right up with that and went in and got that same fingerprint, rolled it across a piece of paper, said he took the money, selling his rights here, selling Celilo Falls. Even at 103, this man had his mind about him. He was spiritually gifted and guided. His connection to our Mother Earth was like his life, his medicine, his way, his songs gave him supernatural wisdom, how to respond and react to the things that they were doing to him. And you could say, if you were to look at my documents, that he really set precedents all the way around in all the ways that you can get federally recognized, because they denied him of all three ways. They congressionalized the whole situation. They passed one congressional act after another, saying, yes, in fact, they're their own government. Clearly, they've negotiated through all of this, and they have records of it. And they have meetings over it, and they govern themselves. And now we find ourselves down here helpless and hopeless. It really is. Extreme poverty really sucks for me. I got to tell you, when a multi-billion-dollar industry can come in here and take over our water and kill it, it's like the final nail for her. She can't take much more. She's showing us worldwide she can't take no more. Worldwide, she's dumping entire rivers on the heads of people that have been displaced. We look like we have water here compared to most of the world, but we're in the illusion that we have water because it's hardly even safe to drink at all, much less for the DAOs to have the liability to feed this aquifer so that Google can use trillions and trillions of water for their new data center, which is a multi-billion-dollar data center. There's one, and the second one just got finalized. And because that second one got finalized, they transferred the $103 million to the city and county. And the last meeting I went to with them was they didn't want to hear or discuss anything else other than the top on their agenda was to agree that it's best for the city and county, and that the city and county, the commissioners and council could agree that it would be best to be put into an endowment and live off the interest. And in all of that, there's nothing earmarked for Indian country down here, and yet we are a fading, perishing people like our river. Columbia River Indians who never left here, who never wanted to go to the reservation and live under that covering, who live a way of life that is still being carried on here, and that is to be the stewards of our mother, to never condemn her. That was the heart of my chief, Tommy Thompson. I will never sell her. And yet $109 million just sold a big chunk of her. That is unprecedented to me in these territories in terms of what's going to happen to our Columbia River. And Juana, Please ask me another question because I'm running out. This is emotionally draining for me.
Well, when we first met, we were talking about Nestle and Cascade locks.
Oh,
so what's the connection between the two?
Well, the Indians rallied behind it and said no to Nestle, and Nestle had to get out of town. One of the things about Cascade Locks is this, the history with Google there is that Google wanted to put a data center there in Cascade Locks. And they got denied, and city councilmen got put off council for their agreement to let Google in when their citizens said no. There were a lot more people in this thread on Facebook here in the Dalles, Oregon, that were for Google because, like the sentiment that who cares? It's going to make us money. We're going to be good here in the Dalles, No, we're not. I went out and took pictures. Anyway, back to Cascade Locks. The precedents that they've set is, I don't know. I haven't checked into it legally, and I'm not an attorney. I'm well versed in federal Indian law, and everything that I'm talking about is federal Indian law. And as the original stewards all across the land, Indian precedence has been set going back to the treaties. We were the first people here, and we remain. We're in low numbers here on the Columbia River and getting lower. COVID took a good swipe of our elders, and I'm 50 something, and now we're the new elders, and now we've experienced not having salmon at the longhouses for our first food ceremony here on the river. So that's the day that my chief told them would come. My chief told them, you dam up this river, you make us all to perish. That's what the interconnectedness is, that symbiotic relationship is. And as I sit here, the only voice for Chief Tommy Thompson, or for my mothers, Minnie Wesley Shawway, Irene Williams Bruno, Mary Cook Jack, my matriarchs who did everything to bring about something for us, fulfill the promises to us. We've not received services or goods. They're still starving us out down here, and extreme poverty is still causing up a pent-up demand. This trauma is deep, so misunderstood. Our communities are plagued as one of the most violent, more violent than even the 3 tribes put together. I've seen the statistics out there somewhere on it. Grants that people have received on our heads. But we live in a very prejudiced town of the Dalles, Oregon, where we were less than dogs. Where the KKK ruled. KKK ruled the state of Oregon in the time of the treaties on up into the negotiations for the flooding of the falls. They infiltrated every office at every level here in the state and did everything to get rid of us as a people. Celilo YM. We're her people. We're the people of the falls.
So, in summary, what would you like to say to wrap up?
As a Celilo YM Indian who never took federal recognition with one of the 3 confederated tribes with whom this land here at Celilo was put aside for the use of, and all of the other Indian sites that were put aside for our use, and having no real claim to be invalidated continuously as being the original inhabitants of these said territories and areas, in those territories in which Google proposes to completely take over and dominate and be the supreme law of the land. People need to understand what how federal Indian law dictates and translates and sets precedents all across the land. And I say to the whole matter, as an American Indian woman protected by the same federal Indian law that the tribes operate under to get their services and goods and their treaty rights, that as an individual Indian, my grandmother, Minnie Wesley Shawway, set precedents and federal Indian law that made the writ alive and a whole lot more valid when she won her stay here at Celilo as an individual Indian, owning 0.7 acres inside the current 7.4 acres, which like the electric company and the railroad, they still got their right-of-ways and easements into that 7.4 acres. So we only live on 5.5 acres here at Celilo. And that's where we have resided since time immemorial and is our usual and accustomed site. And it's time to honor the treaties and fulfill the promises and really save a band of Indians from extinction behind our stolen land and our stolen water rights that now we have somehow not even found ourselves in the negotiations or talks behind the water agreements that were made between the city, county with Google. I don't know of any way that that's possible to really exist because federal Indians say, they've usurped our authority and our say, but federal Indian law and the protection of said Indian trumps what they think is theirs to have final say on.
Stand up, stand in. We are Creative Frontline.
I'm Robert Lundahl. I stand up for human rights and the environment.
I am Tracker Gina Marie Rangel Quinones. Let us know whose voice you want to hear on the front line.
Where we connect all people where they stand on the front line.